The cover of the March issue of the Walrus magazine asks us, is the world getting better or worse? Now, taking a page from the prophet Jeremiah, Bruce Mau says that the answer depends on us. He exhorts his audience to choose wisely. He stops short, thankfully, of cursing us, of calling us a brood of vipers. Perhaps he's learned from the prophets of old that smack talk can get you exiled or killed. And he prefers to quote the scientists and the statistics rather than starting his paragraphs with, "Thus saith the Lord." But in almost every other way, he resembles God's ancient messengers who feel compelled to lay our sins bare and tell us to watch our step, for judgment is coming. Is the world getting better or worse, according to Bruce? Well, on the one hand, the last 200 years have borne witness to tremendous human flourishing. In almost every trend that matters, there's been a positive inversion. Advances in science and technology have allowed people to live longer in greater comfort, with more people having access to health care and education. In 1820, 94% of global citizens lived in extreme poverty. Today, that number hovers around 50%. 200 years ago, there was one official democracy, the United States of America, and even that was only for white men. In 2016, 6 out of every 10 governments are considered to be a democracy. Bruce Mau calls this 200-year revolution towards the better the revolution of possibility. The revolution of possibility. So if this revolution of possibility is trending humanity upwards, then why, I want to know, why did more than half of Canadians tell pollsters that they believe the young people today will be worse off than their parents' generation? It turns out that people aren't convinced that we aren't going to be able to put global welfare ahead of personal nationalistic gain. Nor do people actually think that we're going to learn and change fast enough to allow the biotic community that we call Earth to thrive. And I get it. I do. Because I get that sinking feeling sometimes, too. On Tuesday, Holy Trinity held its monthly memorial for homeless people who die alone on the city streets of Toronto. And this past month, we added a record number. 8 people this month to the memorial. And several of the names that we read out were John Doe, John Doe, John Doe, John Doe. Imagine dying on a cold subway grate a couple of kilometers from here, and no one knowing your name. And after the memorial, about 100 of us walked through one of this year's worst snowstorms to meet with Mayor John Tory, and the organizers had made a request to meet with him about a week before. But he didn't come out. Clearly, God's poor are still being kept out of the kingdom. The hungry are not invited by the greedy to the messianic feast. Jesus' beatitudes sting hard when you're standing in a church full of strangers who have gathered to memorialize the unknown life and untimely death of 4 John Does. Feels like we the rich and comfortable, still seem to be prospering at the expense of the vulnerable. Jeremiah warned us against the devious heart that trusts in ways of selfish mortals instead of the abundant ways of God. And in his article, Bruce Mau warns us of a new revolution. A new revolution that has been gaining strength in the last few decades. Take note, he says, in contrast to the 200-year-old revolution of possibility that has raised the standard of living, the revolution of negation, as he calls it. Driven by fear and superstition, it's about shutting other people out and protecting only ourselves, of hoarding wealth and acting alone. So while half of the world has been lifted out of extreme poverty since the 1980s, those fueling the revolution of negation have allowed the top 1% to amass 40% of the world's wealth for themselves. Democracies like Turkey and Poland and Hungary and Venezuela have been slipping towards authoritarianism, and independent watchdogs like the Freedom House are telling us that more and more governments have tried to control free speech, especially online. Fear, superstition, pseudoscience have fueled powerful anti-vaccination, anti-climate change, anti-immigrant movements. So it seems to me that Canadians are right to worry about the future of this coming generation. Our only hope, Bruce Mau argues, is in collectively seeing and embracing the revolution of possibility that still lies ahead of us, rather than defaulting to the revolution of negation that leads to the raising up of drawbridges. And the choices that he offers makes me think of the Indigenous parable told by the grandfather to his grandchild about the two wolves that live inside of each human belly and fight all day, the white one, the dark gray one, and the wide-eyed grandchild says, "Grandfather, which wolf inside me will win?" And the grandfather says, "Whichever one you feed." And while I think it's true that we feed the beast within, it isn't the whole story. Jeremiah, who lived through the original revolution of negation when the Babylonians invaded Israel and crushed the Jewish temple and forced many of the Israelites into exile and servitude, says that the revolution is not won simply by which wolf you decide to feed, but from whence your food source comes. Those who choose the road less traveled, preferring to rely on themselves alone, become insular and insecurely attached to the rest of the community. Even in a mansion with a stockpile of millions, the soul that ignores the cries of the sufferers will shrivel up. For roots planted in a scorching desert of negation will soon find themselves tumbling like weeds, without a home or hope. And as Jesus predicted, they will cry out, "Woe is me, for I have chosen what cannot satisfy." And those who follow the prophet's advice, those who will plant themselves by the river of God's abundant nourishment, will build strong roots to allow God's people to weather the storms and faithfully bear the fruit of compassion that will bring about God's vision for creation. Just like the tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved, Those are the words to the protest hymn based on God's promise spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, who knew that only God's love can save us. We want to do it all by ourselves, but our selfishness defeats and exhausts us. And when we allow ourselves to be children, fed by God's word and spirit alive in us, we become rooted to the beloved community. And we discover that the source of our nourishment is inexhaustible. And that doesn't mean that you will always feel strong and satisfied. There are days when the winds of life will buffet and beat you, and you may even be exhausted today. But when we are rooted in God, there will always be a neighbor to borrow a cup of love and a couple of tablespoons of hope from. Inexhaustible hope, possibility, love, justice for all. That is God's promise. In the days ahead, there are hard choices to make. But for the people of God, there is only one choice. From God's river of justice and peace, we shall not be moved.